Ready?
We're ready to go. Just for the students, remember you're critiquing each one, except for yourself.
We can critique ourselves if you want. Yeah, honors everything. Why? Because we're us.
You have, is Taylor on?
Yeah, Taylor, I believe, is on.
Okay, good. All right. Why don't you go ahead and get started. You ready, judges?
All right. I'm going to let the group talk about the project and Taylor introduce them, but I'll just talk about what it's been like working with them. It has been a lot of fun working with this group. If there is one word that I could use to describe this team, it will probably be synergy. Just from day one, all the personalities in this group came together, and they didn't necessarily agree the entire time, but they had productive conversations. So being able to work with this group and sit back and watch them work together and iron things out has been so fun for me, and y'all can probably relate as professionals. It's one thing to work with somebody. It's another thing to enjoy the process of working with them. So I've had a lot of fun working with this team. I am really proud of y'all and the growth that each of y'all have had, and I'm excited about this presentation. I know that y'all are about to kill it. So in this last 20 to 25 minutes, just take us home. And with that, I'll let Taylor introduce the team.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, everyone. This is Taylor Nakagawa. I'm the digital editor here at Crain's New York. Would just like to echo everything that Rob said. I think this group has done a really amazing job throughout the whole semester. Just to give you a brief overview, Crain's New York asked them to help us improve our 20 in their 20s issue, which is something that we put out every summer to highlight young entrepreneurs in the city. We see it as a big opportunity to reach a younger audience. And we really wanted to keep it really broad from the start. We were just like, take a look at what we have, take a look at what else is out there, and see how we can, expand this whole program. And I think that these guys delivered in spades. They did a really good job of looking at this project holistically, talking to our marketing team, our events team, our audience team. And when they presented these ideas to everyone in New York, it was really receptive. People loved it. We stuck around for a long time, kind of talking about ways that we can really incorporate it into our process that we're going through right now. We're making our selections for our 20s, and the work that this team showed us is already being put into effect. So it's already showing a huge impact in the newsroom, and I'm really excited for y'all to hear what they have to say. So good luck to the team.
Thank you, Taylor and Rob. It's been awesome working with you guys this semester, and I hope you guys are having a great morning so far. Without further ado, welcome to our presentation. So our team has had the pleasure of working with Crain's New York, and for the past couple of months, we've been researching and really looking into one of their newer projects known as the 20 in their 20s list, like Taylor mentioned, and we're excited to show you our findings and recommendations today. We wanted to just start off with some quick introductions of who we are. So my name is Reina Cabra. I'm currently in the Crosby MBA program here at Mizzou. I will be graduating this May, sadly, but really excited to be here today.
And my name's Michael Ellinger. I'm also in the Crosby MBA program, and I'm also the president and founder of the Trulaski Consulting Association here at the University of Missouri.
Hi, I'm Molly Maley. I am also in the Crosby MBA program at Mizzou. I also work full-time in Dallas, Texas at a creative marketing agency.
Hi, I'm Isabel Rizzi. I am in my last semester of the MSB program at Mizzou, and I'm focusing in marketing and digital merchandising.
And hi, I'm Skylar Rossi. I'm a full-time business journalist, also working on my MBA.
Alrighty, so Taylor mentioned briefly earlier, but what is the 20 in their 20s list? You all may be familiar with similar lists such as Forbes 30 under 30 or even Crain's own 40 under 40s list. But this list aims to highlight young professionals in the New York City area who are in their 20s, and they can have careers ranging from real estate, finance, arts, sports, and much more. But the ultimate goal of the list is to really honor and give prestigious recognition to the upcoming generation of leaders who are and will continue making a lasting impact on the New York City area. So one of the biggest challenges that Crain's had with the 20 in their 20s list is that it doesn't have a solid identity. And this is very apparent with the current overlap with the 40 under 40 list. The 40 under 40 list at Crain's is very prestigious, very renowned, and it's been around for decades, whereas the 20 in their 20s list has only been around for 4 years. So there's a lot of room for their identity to be solidified. And looking at younger audiences is really important because the majority of Crain's current audience is nearing retirement. As you can see, only 12% of the current audience is under 40 years old. So it's really important that we differentiate the 20 in their 20s list and we create a solid identity for them, and all of this in order to bring in younger subscribers for Crain's. Now that we know that the 20 in their 20s list is a direct way to reach a younger audience and really build a place for young professionals in Crain's, that leads to the question we're answering. How can Crain's New York optimize the 20 in their 20s list process to create an impactful and prestigious award which garners increased engagement and revenue? And now I'll hand it off to Isabel.
Thanks, Raina. So to speak to the methodology of how we did our research for this project, our research was built off of 4 pillars. Firstly, interviews that we conducted with several of the past 20 in their 20s winners to see what they gained from the list, the value that Crain's added to their lives, and also interviews with several members of the Crain's team in the newsroom, as well as their marketing team, their events team, and so forth, to figure out exactly what they're capable of, their full bandwidth, so that our recommendations are feasible and well-rounded for them. We also conducted a survey that we sent out to young professionals in New York City and beyond to figure out their media viewing habits and what young people want from the media, so we can see where Crain's can fill in those gaps. We also completed a industry analysis, really diving into the competitors of Crain's, both directly in New York City, as well as national publications that have similar age-based awards. And then lastly, we used our own perspectives. One of the greatest tools we had for this project was that we are in the age group that Crain's is trying to target. So utilizing our own perspectives and opinions was vital to our project as well. And I will now pass it off to Skylar.
So one of the big focuses we had when we were conducting our research is we really wanted to understand the goals that young professionals have and also the challenges they face getting there, and really how Crain's can provide solutions through the 20 in their 20s list to these challenges. And what we learned is that young professionals are really seeking visibility for their work, and they also want to connect with their communities. So we have a quote up here from a former 20 in their 20s winner, Megan Loyce. She is the founder of a venture capital startup called Gen Z VC, and she really emphasizes this. She says that young people care about visibility, and she's looking for growth in the community that she has. Now I'm going to pass it on to Michael, who's going to talk more about what young people are looking for in news.
Yeah, so as we think about young people's media consumption habits, it's important for this list to be sustainable to play to the preferences that they have. So as we conducted our methodology, we focused specifically on what young professionals want from their news and certain themes that they look for as they consume it. The first thing that we found was young professionals are very interested in stories that provide them with aspiration. It's important for a lot of these people as they strive to higher levels to keep the motivation that's continuing their progress to that point. And to this end, it's also important that any aspirations that are set forth in any articles are relatable to young professors or professionals. While some people may be able to raise huge amounts of money or garner huge social media followings, to most professionals, that's not very realistic. And therefore, it's important with these aspirations that they not only set a high bar, but it's an attainable bar as well. And to that end, another thing young professionals are looking for is guidance. Now, as I said, young professionals want to set the high bar, but the question that they often find themselves facing is, how do I actually reach that high bar? This is where Crain's New York has the chance to provide these key insights by utilizing their key connections in C-suite New York offices to sort of generate those guidance and provide them to young professionals in the field. Finally is connection. It's extremely important, and something that we found throughout our interviews was that a lot of these people who had won the award actually were struggling with connecting vertically and getting into the C-suite office and making these connections. Oftentimes, it's very easy to connect horizontally with your peers and people on similar work levels, but in order for you to attain such high aspirations, it's important for you to know the people who are setting the promotional and organizational hierarchy. So, now that we understand what kind of content we need to focus on, how is it that we stand apart from other competitors in the field? Well, as Raina mentioned, one of the most popular lists that you've probably heard of is the Forbes 30 under 30s. Yet, Crain's New York's 20 in their 20s list is specialized apart from this due to its localization. Now, this is something that Crain specializes in, and it's why they have regional hubs such as Crain's New York or Crain's Detroit or Crain's Chicago, is because it allows them to provide more breadth and depth to their applicants because they're specifically focused in the New York area as opposed to being all over the country. Now, after that, it's important to decide what kind of candidates we're looking for. And this is where we can highlight these innovators that are in and around New York City. It's not just about finding people who are worth tons of money or who have raised tons of money. It's about finding people who are making a difference in their communities and who are innovating and disrupting these fields. Lastly, it's about anticipation. Now, Crain's New York has set a great track record of anticipating high-quality applicants and making sure to highlight them in their pieces. And this is one of the things that has brought immense value to their 40s list and also will bring immense value to their 20s list, is this idea of finding people before everyone else. And a notable example of this is Crain's New York actually identified the U.S. men's national soccer team captain before he had even made it to the professional level and highlighted him in one of their stories. Next, I'll pass it on to Raina.
So as I briefly mentioned earlier, we talked about optimizing the current process for the 20 in their 20s list with Crain's. So first comes outreach. Who does Crain's reach out to get those potential applicants coming in? To application and selection. Who does Crain's select as the proper applicants to be on the list? To content. How does Crain's increase engagement through the list? And lastly, to release. How does Crain's strategically decide when, where, and how to provide the list? And now I'll pass it on to Molly to start us off with optimization.
Thanks, Raina. Now looking at all of our research, our interviews, and also our personal perspectives, as well as considering Crain's current capacity and really meeting them where they're at, we put together recommendations for Crain's on how they can best optimize the 20 in their 20s list in the years to come. So the first step that we considered is outreach. Part of what makes the 20 in their 20s list successful is the quality of the applicants coming in as well as the honorees. While Crain's initially in their process used emails to reach out and spread awareness about the list, we wanted to take things a step further. With that, we put together an extensive list of higher-up contacts from universities, think tanks, venture capital groups, and accelerator programs for Crain's to reach out to about the list. You'll see on the screen here, we have an example of the list that we put together. These include high-up contacts from universities such as Cornell, Columbia, NYU, and Rochester. You'll see we reached out to department heads with the business school, political science, as well as engineering. With this, Crain's was able to reach out to these high-up contacts to try to get people to send in nominations for those who could be on the list. With this process, Crain's has actually already implemented this and has received 100 plus applications directly from the outreach list that we provided them. And now the outreach list we did not take much time, and it can be used by Crain's for years to come again and again to bring in new talent. Next, the application and selection process. While Crain's has a current process in place, we feel that adding references or recommendation letters to applications can really add to the exclusivity of the list and of being an honoree. This again can help to ensure that the quality of the applications that are landing at the Crain's newsroom are worthy of the list and can add to that credibility. Next, I will pass it over to Skylar to talk about the content following the list.
Great. So after the Crain's newsroom selects the people that they want to be on the 20 and the 20s list, the next step is really how to best present and release the information in a way that's going to reach young people. So we know that most people under the age of 40 are expecting news to find them. They're getting their news from places like social media rather than going directly to news sources. So Crain's really needs to be intentional about how it's both getting the list to young people, but also how it's getting the list to young people for as long as possible. So we have 3 recommendations in order to do this, really 3 pieces of content. It starts with the names of the winner, to the profiles of each individual winner, and then additional sidebar stories. So let's talk about each of these a little bit more. So to get the initial buzz around the 20 in their 20s list, it's of course going to be about who is on the list. So the first piece of content is really this landing page with the names and faces of the winners. This is a screenshot from last year's 20 in their 20s list, and we really like the style of this. We think it matches Crain's professional tone, as well as has a youthful feel to it. One piece of this that's really important is that it's easily shareable on social media and other outlets. When we were talking to former winners, they were telling us they were sharing this page with friends, family, and on social media, and we think that's really important to prioritize so that you're getting that organic sharing from the winners themselves. We can also see what some others in the industry are doing. We have an example here from Forbes 30 under 30, and they're actually just using the industry and the photos. And what this does is it entices people to go further in the website. When you click on each face, it has more information about each winner, which winners can actually then just share their own profile. We also have an example from the Indianapolis Business Journal. They have a slide deck on their landing page with each of the winners, and when you click on the profile button, it pulls up a paywall, so it's asking readers to consider subscribing. So after the initial buzz of the list starts to die down, we think Crain's can continue the momentum of the list through individual profiles. Now currently Crain's is writing a few paragraphs about each winner and putting it on the website, but we're actually suggesting switching to Q&A profiles. And there's 2 reasons for this. One, we think that this format really hits on those news values we talked about earlier, aspiration, guidance, and connection. It's mostly direct quote from the winners, so it's really highlighting the insights that those winners have. We also think that this will be a lower lift for the newsroom. Currently, reporters are going out and interviewing these winners, then synthesizing the information into a few paragraphs. But with this format, reporters can just transcribe the interviews and restyle it a little bit to have a huge impact still. So it's a lower lift, but a higher impact for readers. And we have an example here from Crain's. They have a Q&A series called Asked and Answered, and we think that this format can be easily applied to the 20 in the 20s. So we see others in the industry are also using Q&As. Here's an example from the Utah Business Journal. They actually incorporate their Q&A questions in a landing page that you scroll through and see questions and answers from multiple winners. It does cut off at a certain point, again, asking readers to consider subscribing. And then we also have an example here from the National Apartment Association, which we include because Crain's reports a lot on the real estate industry. And you see here that they're also using a Q&A format. And finally, after the first week and maybe a few days more, how can Crain's keep the momentum going and keep readers engaged with the list? So we're suggesting associated stories and roundups. And what we mean by this is Crain's can package insights from these winners into additional newsworthy stories. So for example, if 5 of the 20 winners are in the climate tech space, reporters who are already doing these interviews can ask just a few additional questions in the interviews. What is your outlook on this industry? What challenges are you facing? And then package those insights into another article that can be insightful for readers. And we don't think this will take much time at all. Again, they're already doing these interviews with the winners, and reporters can take maybe an hour or 2 to compile this into a different article. Now, here's an example. They're already doing this for the 40 under 40, so we think that they can just reuse that process and apply it to the 20s. Next, I'm going to pass it on to Isabel, who's going to talk more about how Crain's can connect with their audience.
Thanks, Skylar. So beyond optimizing each step of the list from outreach all the way to release, we really want to hone in on those 3 insights of what young people want from the media: aspirations, guidance, and connection. And we think Crain's has a great opportunity to connect with younger people, firstly through social media. Here we have a screenshot from Crain's LinkedIn with a post titled, "Taking a helicopter to the Hamptons may be a thing of the past if Congress has its way." And right now, this post and Crain's social media as a whole does not reflect the interests of young adults. While this article is very interesting to some of Crain's older readers that are more established in their careers and are able to take a helicopter to the Hamptons, this isn't very applicable to the average person in their 20s. So we have a few suggestions for how they can better optimize their social media. So firstly, to reach young professionals, we recommend shifting away from LinkedIn and focusing more on platforms that young people already use in their leisure time. Our research and our survey show that the top 3 platforms that young people prefer over LinkedIn are Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If Crain's wants to reach these younger audiences, it's best to meet them where they're already at. And I want to highlight the sustainability of this piece because we're not adding more work onto the newsroom, but rather shifting away from LinkedIn and focusing on these other platforms instead. Secondly, we recommend previewing articles and stories on social media. The average person in their 20s tends to have less disposable income than people farther along in their careers. So if they're going to invest the money into a Crain subscription, they need to see that it will provide value to their lives. So we recommend that Crains preview some of their articles, posting the headlines, some of the pictures, little snippets of the stories, so that people on social media for free can see a little bit of what a subscription would add to their lives and later become subscribers by enticing them through these social media posts. And then lastly, partnering with Gen Z leaders. This is an insight that we got from Megan Loyce, one of the past winners, who mentioned that there are thousands of young professionals on social media that have massive followings. We recommend that Crain's partners with some of these leaders to get more attention and engagement to Crain's website and social media. We've curated a list of relevant social media individuals that we recommend Crain's partner with in your handouts for further reading. But one person I wanted to highlight is Erin McGough. She's a director and editor in New York City who has a TikTok account with over 3 million followers talking about career advice specifically for young professionals in New York City. And we think this would be a great partnership for Crain's to get more engagement and more followers to their site. And then here we have an example. We found that that Forbes, for their 30 under 30 list, utilizes social media really well. Here we have some examples from their Instagram. On the left, we can see an overview of their feed, and you can see they have the 30 under 30 logo sprinkled throughout, a few photos of winners to really build buzz around the release. In the center, we have the photo that they posted on the day of the release with all of the photos enticing you to click on each person's profile, leading to the website so that you can read more. It really entices you to want to learn more about each of these people. And then beyond that, on the right, you can see a photo that they post on their stories of each winner with their name, the industry they work in, and the company they're related to, and a link directly to the website. So they can utilize social media to bring that attention to the Crain's website. And we recommend that Crain's does something similar with their social media as well. And now I'll pass it off to Michael to speak to our event.
So as we think about awards and the events that they go about to celebrate their winners, typically what we come up with is a reception or a big gala, something with a lot of people that typically restrains you just to one table and limited conversation. We want to do away with this idea of awards being only presented through these huge receptions and instead pivot Crain's New York to a networking event. Now, as we mentioned earlier, one of the key things that young professionals are looking for is connection, and this is an excellent opportunity for Crain's to provide this. As I mentioned, we're not looking for a ton of people at this event, but what we are looking for is impactful people, and therefore we're limiting the number of tickets to only 100 people. Additionally, we want this event to meet regularly. We want this sense of the Crain's community to become something that's ingrained in all winners. And therefore, we want this event to happen more than just once a year and be done. We're instead proposing a quarterly event to keep these conversations and keep these relationships going as the Crain's list continues to mature and solidify its identity more. Now, the next part of this event proposal is we're proposing a brunch event. In our talks with Michelle, who is the event director for Crain's, she let us know that they have higher attendance of people in this desired demographic of younger professionals at their power breakfast as opposed to some of their other events. Now, this is because, as we know from our own personal perspectives, a lot of young people, especially young professionals, are busy after work hours, whether that be with social life, whether that be with other work commitments or other organizations. They just don't have the time to take 3 to 4 hours out of their day to go to an event after hours when they have other stuff to be working on. And then we come to building a community. Now, this is something that I alluded to a little earlier, but as I mentioned, it's important for Crain's to be impactful with their 100 tickets that they have. To do this, we suggest that they re-invite previous winners of both the 20s list and the 40s list to really implement this impactful and prestigious community that becomes the whole Crain's community. And furthermore, by utilizing the connections that they have with upstanding members of New York, they can also increase that vertical integration that these young professionals are striving so much to find. Finally, when we talk about events, it's important for every part of the event to be impactful. We don't want any wasted motions. And to that end, even the sponsors need to be impactful. And now what I mean by this is while it may be easy to cater in like Panera or something along those lines, Crain's has a unique opportunity to highlight some of their other people that they have mentioned in previous stories and have them cater instead to further build this Crain's community and show that just being highlighted in Crain's itself is important and impactful enough that you'll get the chance to meet these prestigious members of the New York City community. But as with all good things, we must ask ourselves, well, what's this going to cost? So, as we found out from Michelle, each event cost about $15,000. Now this cost includes everything from staffing to location to food and to chairs and tables and all of the extra stuff that you would need. Now, for 4 events, that $15,000 brings us to a total cost of $60,000. Crain's also mentioned that they normally have sponsors for all of their events, and as we did more research, we found that their lowest sponsorship package was their gold package, which required a $20,000 initial investment to an event series. This would bring Crain's initial cost down to only $40,000. Now, it's important to note that Crain's has criteria for all of their events that they must reach a 60% profit margin for them to even be okay to go forward. When you calculate this into the $40,000 initial investment that Crain's has, it brings that required revenue up to $64,000 in order for this event to be okayed. Now, as we found from Michelle as well, the ticket price of events typically is $179. So if we take this and we apply it across to reach the $64,000 required revenue in a break-even analysis, we find that it only would require 330 tickets over 4 of these events. That leaves them with an extra 70 tickets, which would go to pure profit, as well as the potential for more sponsorships to further lower their initial investment and provide even more profit to this event series and more value to not only the Crain's 20 in their 20s list, but to the Crain's community as a whole. And with that, I'll pass it off to Raina to take us home.
Thank you, Michael. So we just wanted to give a recap of our recommendations. They are very low lift, but extremely impactful. Starting with positioning is how do we differentiate the 20 in their 20s list from other similar lists, especially Crain's own 40 under 40 list? How do we make it so that people want to be on the 20s list just as much as they want to be on the 40s list? And that really starts with focusing on young individuals who are on the cusp of innovation. And when it comes to releasing content, we want to ensure that Crain's is releasing their content on a timeline to increase engagement and really extend the digital real estate of the list. And when it comes to social media, we want to move to those platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, because that's where the research says that that's what these young people use. And a lot of those Gen Z leaders use these platforms as well, so it's important for Crain's to partner with them to increase engagement and also build trust with the Crain's brand. And lastly, when we come to the networking events, we want these to really create an atmosphere for these young individuals to network upwards and get that visibility that they deserve. And with the quarterly events, we want them to be able to develop lifelong relationships with peers, people inside or outside of their industry, and create mentorships out of these events as well. All of these recommendations coming together will create an impactful and prestigious 20 in their 20s list that will even rival the likes of the dominant 40 under 40s list, and it'll increase the number of younger subscribers through a cultivated community and through brand trust. And lastly, as our group are all individuals in this 20s demographic, we can assure you that the 20 in their 20s list will create an experience that anyone in their 20s would want to be a part of. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. We really appreciate it, and we'll open up the floor for questions now.
Like, if I understood this correctly, that your your list of contacts was already implemented. You've got 70 plus contacts to recommend nominees, and you received 100. How does that compare to previous years?
So the 100 plus was actually the increase in numbers from previous years. While they wouldn't give us exact numbers of how many they had previously in comparison, they did say that they had already received over 100 more applicants this year than last year, and that was at the time of our trip to New York.
All right, so I was with you up until you got to the event. So did you, just looking at what's going on in Kansas City with the NFL draft right now, where they built this gigantic screen, I mean, it's just amazing. It seems like folks the 20 under 20 winners would like a gala, would like a lot of attention. Did you guys hear from them that was something they could not really get that excited about?
Yeah, so as we conducted our interviews, one of the things that was focused on the most was this idea of making these connections. And that was actually one of the things contextually when we were asking our questions, we were asking, what did you feel like you could do better, the Crain's list could do better, or you could get more out of being on this list? And they kept highlighting these connections, this ability to network with not just peers, but industry professionals and C-suite executives. And so that's where we think the opportunity is more so, especially since when you consider like a typical gala, the way it would work is that, like, you know, I'm a company, I buy up a table and I sit at my table and don't really talk to anybody else. That's not that's not a value proposition for these young people.
And would that also, does the 40 under 40 have a big gala?
They currently do not have an event for the 40. They used to do it. It stopped in the pandemic, and they haven't brought it back since.
Okay.
I have a question about that. Unlike Brandy, I liked your idea. I thought that was a good idea of building relationships. But my question is, will people who are in their 20s be able to afford a $179 ticket?
Absolutely. So as we have been going through this, one of the things we've been focusing on with Michelle is that same question and trying to gauge the amount of attendance that they're having at these events. So the $179 is actually the lowest price that Crain's offers for events. Their typical networking events for the diversity ones, I believe, a ticket goes for around $300. So the $179 is a huge discount, and they said that to that $300, that is, and they had said that the Power Breakfast, it was one of the things that they had seen the most people at, and also the other events that charged that $179 price, they saw a lot of young professionals at.
Young professionals?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And who else do you think would be at the event?
So you can go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Who else do you think would go to that event?
Yeah, so we think that this could be pivotal for a lot of bigger companies that are worried, especially with all the retirements, about succession planning and about finding capable potential leaders to run their business in the future. So we think this would be an excellent opportunity for them to either, one, develop these organic relationships, or two, just start these connections for later down the line when these people are looking for more secure, more stable jobs, especially those with retirement benefits.
And one other thing about the issue with the 40 under 40. So somebody could, you, Skylar, could be one of the 40 under 40. You also could be one of the 20 under.
Yeah, so that's the challenge exactly, there's overlap.
So you had some things that you're trying to differentiate, but did you think about whether there was some way to prevent 40 under 40 from selecting people that are in their 20s?
Yeah, I don't think that's a practical solution for Crain's. That didn't seem like a road that was realistic for them. So we really focused on making the 20s in their 20s list stand out differently than the 40 under 40, so people have a sense of which one fits their experience and their needs.
I wanted to jump in on that as well. So we had talked to Talisha Bryant, which is the woman who in Crain's New York who runs their 40 in their 40s list, and we had mentioned that idea of maybe making like 30 the cutoff, right, so that way you wouldn't have overlap, and she looked at us with a blank face and just said no. So.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds like they do recruit for this. They solicit applications. You know, she can just send it to people that are over 30 if you wanted to, I guess, but she's not going to do that.
Absolutely. I think from my understanding of it, this the 40 in their 40s list for Crains, the oldest version we could find online went all the way back to 1988. And in fact, I believe it was mentioned at one point that this is one of the oldest lists that they have. So anything that would refine down their criteria of applicants and of nominees is something that they just absolutely will not do, because they want to keep that same level of prestige and renown that they've capitalized on for so many years.
I wanted to add on to something Skylar said as well. It's really up to the individual on which list they want to be on. That's really important because we talked about how with the 20s list, we want to differentiate it by focusing on young individuals who are on the cusp of innovation. So a lot of these people in their 20s, they're not going to be making the biggest moves quite yet. Or at least we won't see the outcomes of those quite yet. So I think when you differentiate it that way, the people in their 20s will reside more with the 20 in their 20s list versus the 40 under 40s. And that's why it's really important that we create a distinct identity for the 20 in their 20s list.
Anything?
I don't have anything. No, you already answered.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.